All right, welcome to Hoops Tonight, presented by FanDuel here at The Volume, live on AMP. Happy Tuesday, everybody. I hope your guys' weeks are off to a good start. Here's the plan for the next couple of days. Tonight, we're going to be talking about Ben Simmons' return to Philly, just focusing in on that game and on some of the narratives surrounding Ben Simmons. And then keep an eye on the feed tomorrow. We're going to be doing a mailbag. So all of you guys who send in mailbag questions, I really appreciate that. We're going to get to a bunch of them. I think I picked out 7 of them that we're going to be hitting tomorrow. So keep an eye on the feeds. And then also for those of you who are listening to this on YouTube or on the podcast feed, don't forget that AMP is the very first place that you guys can get these post-game breakdowns. So this was a good old-fashioned ass-kicking in a lot of different ways. It felt like Philly was completely in control that entire second half. They really pulverized Brooklyn on the glass and shot the ball really, really well. Now remember, Brooklyn has been really good defensively lately. They're fourth. Coming into tonight, they were fourth in defensive rating since the Kyrie suspension. But they are a long and athletic team, but they're not a physically imposing team. They are not strong. And when you look at that Philly roster, and even down 3, basically their 3 best players, even down those guys, it's like PJ Tucker, big, strong wing, like physically imposing wing. Tobias Harris, big, strong wing. Even Montrezl Harrell, he plays a lot bigger and stronger than he actually is. Paul Reed, big, strong player. And then they've got enough ball handling and shooting with guys like DeAnthony Melton that they picked up, and Furkan Korkmaz can make plays with the basketball in his hands. They've got guys that can play offense. And so if you bring a weak effort, you can still lose to that team, especially when they're in front of a crowd that's highly motivated and that wants to beat the Brooklyn Nets because Ben Simmons plays for them, which we'll talk about here in just a second. Tobias Harris absolutely dominated the second half of this game. It's funny, when I coming into the season, I talked about Philly's top 4 players and how they were the most talented top 4 in the league. And everyone, seemed to kind of react in a very unenthusiastic manner to that, because it's like a lot of times guys like Tobias Harris just kind of get forgotten, and he is the forgotten member of that group. But the reality is that has more to do with his role than it does with his actual skill set. Tobias Harris is a big, strong wing that has a good, versatile skill set that allows him to score the basketball. He's just on a team alongside Tyrese Maxey, who's one of the best young guards in the league, James Harden, who's just flat out one of the best guards in the league, and Joel Embiid, who's a top 6 or 7 player in the league. So he's relegated down to a role where he's doing a lot more spotting up, a lot more attacking closeouts, a lot more playing on the margins rather than doing things with the basketball in his hands. And that's just an important part of the game of basketball, something that impacted me when I played in college. My first couple years, I was a scorer. I was playing on teams that were less talented. They put the basketball in my hands. I averaged double figures. I shot a lot better, had a bunch of big scoring games. And then I played on a team where I had 2 All-American guards, and they stuck me in the corner, and it was a completely different type of role. And in that season, I had my worst shooting season. After shooting like 50% in conference play from 3 the previous year, I couldn't make a damn shot to save my life in that much smaller role. And, in a lot of cases like that, when you get into a different type of basketball role, you can struggle. And I feel like over the years, Tobias Harris has gone a little bit underappreciated and has become that forgotten member of the team that has more to do with the role that he's in than it does his actual skill set. And what did he do that entire second half? He picked on the smaller Brooklyn guards and wings and scored over the top of them because he is a big, skilled wing. And I hope that a game like tonight just kind of reminds people that he's capable of a lot more than what he has shown for the Sixers over the course of the last couple years. And really, he's a guy who's sacrificing to make this particular team work, and that people should be a little bit more hesitant to offer criticism towards him when he's having a rough night, when he's, playing on the margins. Brooklyn, again, like I said earlier, they've been much better defending and rebounding lately. Even since the Kyrie suspension, they've been 23rd in rebounding, which originally before that, they were like near the very bottom. So again, bad, but better than it had been. But tonight they completely let go of the rope with both, and they got their ass kicked. And that's how it's going to go. For Ben Simmons, I really didn't think the reception was that bad. And, there was some boos, when he'd miss a jump hook, there'd be some boos when, just in general, There was some negative energy that was directed towards him, but it wasn't that bad. And the reason why I think is pretty simple. First of all, this isn't LeBron coming back to Cleveland as the best player in the world. Ben Simmons is a bad contract right now. He's played a few good games in a row, but right now he's not a super desirable basketball player. So it's not like the Philly fans horribly miss him, if that makes sense. And then secondly, they got James Harden back in that deal. They could not get James Harden if it wasn't for the Ben Simmons trade. And, James Harden hasn't been the MVP James Harden that we're accustomed to, but he's definitely been a top 20-something player in the league over the course of the last couple seasons, and a hell of a lot better than Ben Simmons has been. And so that saga, the whole Ben Simmons saga, worked out pretty damn well for the Philadelphia 76ers. So I don't think that they have a lot of reason to be upset at Ben. And even when we go further, and like for instance, when we look at the refusal to play, because in terms of, I think a big part of why Cleveland fans were mad at LeBron was the manner in which he went to Miami. You look at the decision, there's kind of like he looks really happy. It looks like he's a kid in a candy store picking from teams. The optics of it were really bad. And so in a lot of ways, when you saw that, and then you saw him put on the Miami Heat jersey, and you see him do that weird party where he's saying the not 5, not 6, not 7, they're, just Bosh, Wade, and LeBron by themselves, not with the rest of the team, but just those three in an arena doing like a hype event. Like, there was a lot of objectively really unlikable stuff that was done there that made it so that when LeBron came back, he was kind of a pariah. And then, of course, when he went into the arena, it was like almost painfully awkward to watch as the crowd was treating him horribly, and he was just lighting them on fire. Like, he destroyed them in that game, particularly with his jump shooting. And with every passing shot that he made and turned and looked at the Cavs bench, it almost was like more and more unlikable. Really, LeBron's redemption didn't happen until he got humiliated in the 2011 playoffs, and that kind of humbled him in a lot of ways. And then he became his more likable version of himself moving forward. But, the Ben Simmons thing had a lot of similar hallmarks, right? Like, didn't show up first to training camp, skipped a bunch of stuff, but then he does show up and he's got like his phone in his pocket on while he's running through defensive drills. And then he's like, he's bringing up mental health issues and all these different things. There are a lot of reasons for Philly fans to dislike Ben. But the dirty little secret is him doing that was the best possible thing that could have happened to Philly. Because Ben Simmons had a bad playoff game against the Atlanta Hawks and a really bad playoff moment where he passed up on the dunk, right? But for the most part, over the previous couple of years, he had been really damn good. In 2021, he was one of the candidates for Defensive Player of the Year. So like Ben Simmons had a lot of value. And so him not actually playing to start the season last year kept like an aura of mystery surrounding Ben in a good way. It was like you were trading for what you thought was the previous version of Ben. Had he shown up to camp with the back issues that he had been having, with the knee issues that he had been having, essentially in a declined form, had he been, more of a professional and just showed up to work during his trade request, he would have probably tanked his own value well beyond the point of any hope of bringing a James Harden back in a deal like that. So the reality is whether it was the disrespect or the mental health issues or the combination of all those different things, him doing that stunt that him and Clutch Sports pulled hid the fact that he had massively declined as a player, which kept his trade value more of a question mark rather than a sure thing that it was definitively a bad contract at that point, and it facilitated that particular deal. So the reality is for Philly, it's about as good as it could have gone. And I think that's why there's not that much negative energy towards him. And I think that's why tonight didn't have that feel of LeBron coming back to Cleveland or anything else along those lines. On a positive note for Ben, in Ben's declined form, he literally needs a team like Brooklyn to find value on a basketball court right now. A big part of it is that inverted spacing concept that I talk a lot about. You guys have heard me talk about this with Golden State. People will say like, oh, Draymond won't take that three. Well, it just doesn't matter because the paint, they're not actively trying to drive the basketball into the paint all that often. So spacing doesn't matter to them. Like if Draymond Green is unguarded on the right wing and Klay Thompson is guarded in the right corner, they'll just kick it to Dre and he'll quick do a dribble handoff for Klay and he'll get a wide open three. When you have teams that are actively trying to take the top off of the defense with jump shooting, spacing just doesn't matter all that much. So a guy like Ben Simmons, if you put him alongside Anthony Davis and LeBron, that could be a catastrophe. LeBron James and Anthony Davis are two of the top 4 restricted area finishers in the league right now. They're constantly hunting those opportunities. That congestion would be problematic for them. This is a Brooklyn Nets team that has Kevin Durant, one of the best pull-up jump shooters in the league. Kyrie Irving, one of the best pull-up jump shooters in the league. Seth Curry, one of the best shooters in the league. Patty Mills, one of the best shooters in the league. Joe Harris, one of the best shooters in the league. Here's some numbers to kind of demonstrate what I'm talking about. 60% of Brooklyn's shot attempts this year are jump shots. 29% of them are pull-up jump shots. So almost a third of Brooklyn's offense is an off-the-dribble jump shot over the defense. And then another third of them are catch-and-shoot jump shots. So they're just not hunting those at-the-rim opportunities nearly enough for that to matter. As a comparison, here's some Lakers numbers. Only 45% of their shot attempts are jump shots. Only 16% of their shot attempts are pull-up jump shots. So spacing is just going to matter a lot more to them because they're constantly trying to force their way to the basket, and congestion disrupts those driving lanes. On a team like Brooklyn, if Ben Simmons' defender is ignoring him and roaming, it just doesn't hurt nearly as much. And honestly, his ability to make plays out of the short roll is significantly more valuable for them. It's kind of like with Draymond. The ability to quickly do something with the basketball that creates an advantage for someone else when you're left wide open is much more valuable for a jump shooting team. And he's doing everything Brooklyn needs him to do. He's finding openings around the rim for drop-offs and quick finishes. He's been having a lot of scoring success in this last 3 or 4 games in the dunker spot, just by relocating and staying available and quickly making, reverse layups and things along those lines. It doesn't have to be dunks, although he had a couple of dunks and lob situations tonight. But he's still getting the ball in transition and pushing the ball and hunting shooters, exactly like Draymond Green does. And that's always been one of Ben Simmons' best gifts. And then in pick and roll situations with Kevin Durant, he can make quick decisions out of the short roll. And then he's not the defensive player of the year type of candidate that he was a couple years ago, but he's still a very good plus defender and has a knack for defensive playmaking. There was a play there in the, playmaking is such a vague term in all sports because it doesn't really have like a definition in the sense that like, oh, you just did playmaking, you know what I mean? But because we can sort all these plays down to specific types, pull up jump shot here, a steal here, a block here, whatever it is. To me, playmaking is a natural feel for the momentum in a basketball game and like improvisational things on either end of the floor that create a momentum shift in a basketball game. For example, end of the first half. Ben Simmons, I can't remember who he was guarding. It might have been Matisse Thybulle, but it was out by half court, and he rips the ball away. But when he rips the ball away, the ball's loose on the ground. Ben Simmons sees Kevin Durant streaking the floor because Kevin Durant started streaking because he thought Ben Simmons had the basketball, but he didn't. Ben Simmons laid out and just punched the basketball into the front court, and it went right into Kevin Durant's hands, and he ended up getting a dunk. And like, that's playmaking. There's whoever practices punching the basketball, like a diving punch of the basketball, nobody does. What that is that's an instinctual, improvisational thing that you do on a basketball court that ends up in a momentum shift. Of course, DeAnthony Melton stole all that momentum by knocking a 3 down right before the end of the half, but that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. Ben Simmons is a defensive playmaker for this team that doesn't hurt them on the offensive end because of the things that he can do in the dunker spot and in the short roll. Ideal situation for him. So again, happy for Philly. They did fine in the Ben Simmons saga. Happy for Brooklyn because now they got snowed basically on the James Harden trade. That's a whole other story. But as far as Ben Simmons goes, this is pretty much the ideal situation for him at this point. All right, guys, that is all I have for tonight. Like I said earlier, keep an eye on the feeds. Tomorrow we'll have that mailbag episode coming out. As always, I sincerely appreciate your support. We will see you next time.